This is going to be a different kind of video. This is just an update. Over the summer, it's December, as you can gather. So it's been about 4 months now that I found out I have a brother that I've never met. So the backstory is, the reason why I'm telling you this actually is because I'm going to meet him next week. So I'm going to do maybe a 2-part, 3-part series of these videos just to let you know how it's going. The backstory is, over the summer he found out he was adopted. And he's 2 years older than me. So he went his whole life, thought that his family was his biological family, only to find out over the summer that they're not his family. Cannot imagine what that would be like. I assume it was a lot to unpack. I still have not spoken to him directly over the phone. What happened was, his son is 18. His son seems to be tech savvy, like my daughter is. And so he signed up to 23andMe right away as soon as his dad told him. And my daughter is on 23andMe as well. So my daughter called me one night, July or August, I think it was, and she said, hey, this guy is on the phone and he's saying that he thinks he's related to us. So I was like, yeah, okay. First of all, he had been calling all these numbers. My daughter had like 15 numbers that came up online after 23andMe said they were a match. He kind of went to Google and tried to do a search and did like social media search and then LinkedIn search, and he found all these different numbers and he was about to give up. He called like 14 numbers and none of them were the right person. And then the last number was my daughter. And she was like, it was a number from Atlanta. I don't know nobody in Atlanta. I almost didn't answer the number, but she answered it out of curiosity. A good thing she did, because he also said, this was my last try, and if I didn't get an answer, I think I was gonna give up. So they were able to speak, and then she called me on 3-way, and so we spoke. And we chatted a little bit, and I realized that he was probably accurate in his assumption that we were related. Based on some of the things that he was saying and everything, I believe it. And from there, we've just been conversing with him, the son of my brother. So I gave my number and everything. I don't know why he didn't call. I think he texted. He did text, and he sent us a picture of him and his family, but that's it. So I'm just thinking that, okay, it's a lot probably to unpack, and he needed some time to let this all soak in. So we're going to meet next week. And so I'm in DC, as most of you probably know. I'm from New York though, and my dad is from Boston. His whole family was from Boston. So we're gonna meet in Boston because he also connected with the biological mom's, his biological mother's side. My dad passed away in 2012. You know, I told him, it's not like he was there for me either. He didn't take care of me. But I seem to have had more of a relationship with him than anybody else did, any of his other kids. And this is not the first time I found out that I have a sibling.
What the hell did you just say?
So this is the 3rd time. The first time my dad told me about a son he had, Daryl, right? Now, Daryl Tatum has passed away already, maybe 2 years ago. He had, his kidney failed. He needed a kidney transplant. His kidney failed, and I think he had kidney problems his whole life. But anyway, he was really sick. He was on dialysis. I met him, maybe I want to say in my early 20s. My dad told me about him, and so he introduced us. Like, I guess they were in touch. Daryl, of course, lived in Boston as well. Then, maybe when I was around 30, I guess he told me then about another son that lived in Harlem, and that's Kevin. And he gave me enough so that I was able to find Kevin, because he said, you know, I remember he lived with his grandmother. The grandmother owns a church. She owns a brownstone. I think he might have known the street. So I was able to look him up by his last name and, you know, a church being on such and such street. I was able to find the address that way, and then I sent a letter, and just like a one-page letter saying who I was, who my dad was, and stuff like that. And Kevin got the letter, and he called me up, and we met in the city for dinner. And so, yeah, we've been in contact ever since. Okay, so now this will be the third time that I found out that there's a sibling. And apparently, there's even another sibling that his son uncovered in all his research, and he's in Boston already. He still lives in Boston. So I believe next week I'm supposed to meet two brothers that I didn't know I had. That's going to be interesting. I don't know. I guess I don't feel any kind of way about it. Like I said, I wasn't too surprised because I've been through this before. If I was on the other side, if I was him, I imagine he has lots and lots of questions. All I could say is I'm just curious about what kind of life he had, how it turned out for him, because in my mind, I'm thinking whatever life he had probably was better than what he would have had he been in this family, because it's dysfunctional over here, okay? One thing I do know is that his mother overdosed. And the irony in that is that my mother overdosed. I was like maybe 27 when I met Kevin from Harlem. His mom overdosed also when he was a kid. So he said he found his mom in the bathroom and she was on the floor. I think he had to be 3 or 5, some age like that. So anyway, so my dad had 5 siblings. My uncle was in contact with me. I learned of him probably when I was 14. I was pregnant at 14 with my daughter, and he came to the rescue. You know, I was in a runaway shelter at the time, and he popped up and introduced himself. I never knew of him, I don't think, before then. My dad had just went to jail. I was staying with him just a very short time, like 1 month. And he went to jail, so he took me to the runaway shelter, to the under 21 is the one. Covenant House, they call under 21, that's where I was at. It was Times Square, and it was 1984. So the Times Square that you know and love today is not the Times Square of 1984, okay? Let's just say that. It was very much raunchy and not safe, and prostitutes and pimps, and yeah, it was a scene. It was a whole scene. And so I wasn't there that long. I was probably there for like maybe 2 weeks. And then this uncle popped up out of nowhere, like a fairy godfather. Like he was well dressed and spoke very well, very highly educated. He had lived abroad, and he took me from there and said, you cannot live here. This is not a good environment for you. And so he took me to different interviews, I remember, for maternity homes. So I remember going on 3 interviews. And I don't know if these places are around. Newfoundland Home was one of them. I can't remember the second place I went to. And then the third place was Inwood House. It was on the Upper East Side, which is a very nice, rich neighborhood. And Inwood House still exists today. And so that's the one I wound up going to. And they had their own school right across the street, only for the pregnant girls that lived at Inwood House. And so that was, you know, my uncle took me there. I had the interview, I wound up staying, he gave me some money, and he went home. And then periodically throughout my life, I saw him, met for lunch or something like that. He popped in to say, how you doing? How's everything going? But the strange thing is, I never met his family. I never knew his wife. I never knew his sons. And so just him on my dad's side. Him and my dad's sister and the sister's kids and my dad's mom. I knew, a handful of people on my dad's side and had a relationship with them. But the rest of the family, no, I did not. And so I've concluded over the years by things that have been said or I surmise on my own, I don't know. My dad was the black sheep of the family. He was a criminal, he was a drug abuser, and I think they kind of just distanced themselves from him and let him do his own thing. So I think any of his kids, we just weren't really, of interest to them. That's what I think happened. So yeah, I don't have that much of father's side of the family. And now that he's gone, his mother passed away, his sister, was my aunt Shirley, had a relationship with her and her kids. All of that is gone. So it's just my one uncle that came to the rescue when I was 14. He's in his 90s. His two brothers are in their 90s. And so there really isn't much for this new brother now to meet. The story unfolds. So this is video 1, and if you want to follow and find out what happens, I'll be making another update next week, or my preparation in going on this trip. And then the third video will probably be, okay, we met and this is what happened.